Good evening, and thank you for attending. My name is Natalie Sayre, and I will be the moderator for this evening's candidate debate. The Citizens Clean Election Commission is the sponsor for this evening's debate. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign finance reform measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. Participation as a clean elections candidate is strictly voluntary. The system provides full funding for qualified candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules. To qualify for funding, participating candidates must illustrate the support of their constituents by gathering $5 qualifying contributions from registered voters in their legislative district. The candidates agree to adhere to contribution and spending limits and may not accept money from special interest groups. They also agree to participate in these debates. As we move into the debate, we encourage audience questions. If you have questions, please print them clearly on the card given to you when you walked in and hold it up. One of our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. We screen questions for clarity, to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. If you need another card, just raise your hand. The debate is scheduled for 1 hour, so we may not get to all of the audience questions, but we will do our best. There is an independent timer who will see that all candidates have equal time to answer questions and will tell them when their time is up. Our format this evening will be opening statements, 2 minutes. A quick lightning round, 2 minutes to answer general questions, 2 minutes to answer candidate questions, and closing statements, 2 minutes. We ask that you remain polite to all of the candidates and give them a fair, uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. This means no applause, outbursts, or cheers, except as we introduce the candidates in a moment. This is especially important as live captioning services will be made available during this debate for those individuals that are hearing impaired. I will refer to each candidate by their full name prior to each question and ask that the candidates speak clearly into their microphones. Allow me now to introduce our candidates. Mr. Archangel Archie Moscato is running for State Senator, District 22, Democrat, participating in clean elections. Mr. Fred Botha, State Representative Candidate, District 22, and independent, participating in clean elections. Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, State Representative Candidate, District 22, a Democrat, also participating in clean elections. And Mr. Larry Woods, State Representative Candidate, District 22, a Democrat, and also participating in clean elections. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order, by last name starting with the Senate, and then we'll progress from that starting point. The closing order will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name. So, Mr. Archie Moscato, will you please start with your opening remarks?
Thank you, and thank you for the Clean Elections Commission for sponsoring this debate. Thank you for all of you that are in attendance today. It is certainly well appreciated and encouraging that you are looking to seek more information. Also on this 9/11 day, I would like to also remember the first responders as well as the people who did not survive that attack so many years ago, as well as the service people, including my son, who is getting ready for his second deployment to Afghanistan shortly. So thank you for that. I am Archie Moscato, and I am running for the Senate position in LD 22. I have a family, my wife Linda, my 2 sons, Michael and Archangel II. And I was a career teacher, taught for 30 plus years, most of it in the Deer Valley School District in the Northwest Valley. I have had a lot of experience since then with both nonprofit organizations and oh, thank you very much, and the business world, being a member of the Surprise Regional Chamber of Commerce, the Peoria Chamber of Commerce. I'm with the Arrowhead Kiwanis Club, the All Arizona School Retirees Association, the Peoria Education Foundation, and I'm the president of Arizona's AARP Historic Chapter Number 1 in Youngtown, Arizona, as well as a member of the National Chapter Advisory Team. So with all of my experiences, I feel that I am very qualified for this position. Once again, I thank you for being here, and I hope to answer any questions that you may have about my qualifications. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fred Botha, your comments.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for coming this evening. Without you, we certainly couldn't manage at all. We need you more than you need us. I'm not a Republican, as you'll hear. I'm not a Democrat. I am an independent. That is the good news. However, there is bad news. If you look at the current 60 members of the House of Representatives here, the legislature, there is not one independent. What are my chances? Excellent, but with your help. Where are we now in this country? Is our state and is our federal government on course? No, they are not. They need to change as soon as possible. Our economy, our finances, our education, our utility companies in this district need to change if we are not only going to do well in the future, but take advantage of all the opportunities. Am I going to change anything if I'm elected? Probably not, but I will be noisy in a very quiet way. We need to focus on these issues, and to make sure we attack them well, we need people like you, not only just to vote once every 2 years, but to chase us all the time. What I'm going to focus on, you'll hear this evening, and I ask you not only to look up my website, but to call me as much as you can to let me know what you, the voters, expect. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, your remarks.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Bonnie Boyce Wilson, and I'm a candidate for the Arizona House of Representatives in LD 22. I want to thank you for coming tonight and to thank Clean Elections for hosting this forum. This is an important event, a way for voters to learn more about the candidates, and I welcome the opportunity for you to get to know me and my positions better. I'm originally from Colorado. I'm married to David. We have 2 children, 5 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. I'm a moderate Democrat, and that means that my focus is on the middle ground. I really believe that that's where most Arizonans want our state to be, that it's important for us to focus on issues that benefit all Arizonans rather than just a select few. My biggest motivation in running is that I want to represent the middle ground, and I would appreciate your support with that. Education funding is my other main priority. I'm very concerned about what's going on with education, the fact that funding has been cut every year for several years, and we are now at a bare bones minimum. I'm also very concerned about child protection in Arizona. As a social worker, I previously worked in child protection in Colorado and am able to and have the skills and knowledge to help restore that organization here in Arizona. You'll find out more about me as I answer questions, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Larry Woods, your opening remarks.
Thank you. My name is Larry Woods, and I am the candidate for the excuse me. I'm a candidate for the House of Representatives also, along with Bonnie Boyce Wilson. My education background is that I have a master's degree in computer science, and I worked for over 35 years for a Fortune 100 company. We've lived here in the Valley. My wife and I, Diane, have lived here in the Valley for over 16 years. ever since moving to the Valley, very shortly after moving to the Valley, I got involved in a lot of different nonprofit volunteer positions. A boss of mine told me a long time ago, if you hang out your shingle, you'll get the business, and I'm afraid I did. So I've been involved in this sort of thing for over 16 years. It started out with being involved with Make a Difference and the interfaith ministerial food bank and the Maricopa County Volunteer Center where I was a board member. Since moving to the West Valley, which was about 11 years ago, I've been involved in various state commissions, including the Governor's Advisory Board on Aging and also the Citizens Transportation Oversight Committee. And I've been involved in a senatorial advisory committee. I've also been involved in over half a dozen water, electricity, and natural gas rate cases. So I've been there. I know what goes on down there. Now you might say, well, then fine, you're going to go down there and really show them what it's all about, aren't you? And I'm saying, no, that's not the way it works. That's not the way it works. You've got to go down there and you've got to cooperate. You've got to get involved and you've got to get coalitions going together so that you can get these things solved. Going down there and telling people, here's the way it is, and you will do this, you will do that, is not going to work. So I am going to be going down there without a chip on my shoulder, working with both sides, and during the next hour, we'll be discussing some of these things. And then when we come back at the closing, I'll give you some more specifics on how I plan on doing this. And I stop.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
To clarify a question from our audience, were all the candidates invited to the debate or just those receiving Clean Elections funding? All of them were invited. And our Clean Elections participants are the ones that chose to participate. So in an attempt to lighten the mood for this evening's debate, we're going to do a quick lightning round of this or that. This will allow us to get to know our candidates a little more. Please answer with just one word. Mr. Fred Botha, Droid, iPhone, or Windows?
Droid, iPhone.
All right. And Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, CNN, Fox, or MSNBC?
CNN.
And Mr. Larry Woods, Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.
And Mr. Archie Moscato, Mac or PC?
Mac.
So now let's enter into our debate questions. The first question will be for Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson to start us off. What do you believe is the most pressing issue facing the state, and how will you work to solve it? 2 minutes.
Thank you. That's a great question, and I love the opportunity to let you know that I think education is the most important issue facing Arizona right now. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, funding has been cut for education year after year, and we are to the point that we are down at bare bones minimum. It kind of depends which poll you look at how bad we are, somewhere around 48th or 49th in the country. And our schools are not getting enough funding to support classrooms. We're losing a third of our teachers every year. And believe me, experienced teachers are part of providing quality education. We need to give teachers the raises that they need in order to keep them employed. And they give up after a while. Many of our teachers have not had a raise for 4 or 5 years. What I would do to address this is I would, first of all, support obeying the court order that says that Arizona needs to pay money back to the schools that they have cut. And I would start that by using money from the rainy day fund. There is funds there available to meet that court order requirement for the first year. Now, it won't last long. It's like a savings account, and pretty quickly it's gone. So then I would need to work together with other legislators to revamp the entire educational funding system so that we do provide adequate funding for education.
Thank you. And Mr. Larry Woods, your comments.
Well, there's no question, particularly with the $300+ million bill hanging over our head, that this next year the legislature will have to be addressing that and probably spending most of their time addressing that when it comes right down to it. But I think the biggest problem in Arizona is a total lack of vision. There is no plan on where they're going with the state. Therefore, there's no reason in some of their minds to bother to fund public schools because we don't know where we're going anyway, so what does it matter? The idea is let's just get the government cut down to nothing, and then I guess I don't know what we're going to do, and I don't think they know what they're going to do either. And so one of the things, and one of the overlying things, one of the overarching things is the fact that there is no plan. But specifically, this particular session will have to dedicate a good percentage of their time to figuring out where to get an extra $300 million. And hopefully later on in the questions, I'll be able to answer that. In fact, since I see I have a few more seconds, I'll answer at least one of those. There is a corporate tax credit for donations to private schools that takes over $48 million out of the Treasury every year. $48 million for funding of private schools by corporations. I am totally against that, 100%. Now, agreed, $48 million isn't $300 million, but it's a start. And so I'll just stop right there, and maybe we'll get back into some of these other things just a little later. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Argui-Moscato?
My biggest priority is public education, not just at the K-12 level, but also at the university level. If you listened to the gubernatorial debate last night, there was a mention, a very quick mention, that there was $1.5 billion. That's a lot of money. $1.5 billion still in the state treasury, along with a $450 million rainy day fund. Those funds should immediately be used to stop the appeals and pay the money to public education that the voters had approved for Prop 301, as well as what the courts have mandated that they pay to the public schools to bring them back to par. They are appealing right now to raise, that they don't want to raise, the rate that the state pays for each student, which right now is at approximately $3,300 per year per student. The court mandate would raise that to only $3,500 per year, and they're objecting to that. I propose that we use those funds, that we eliminate the state tax credit tuition fund, that we eliminate the empowerment accounts or the voucher system. All of that money should go back into public education, and find whatever other money is necessary, because education is our way out. If we can empower the people, we can turn this state around. There are two things to do in order to stay in power. One of those is to keep the people poor. One of them is to keep them uneducated. We cannot tolerate that any longer, not for our students, not for our adults. We need access to higher paying jobs and better opportunities to create a better life for everybody. Education is that way.
Thank you. And Mr. Fred Botha, your response.
Do you want me to mention my priority or to his?
No, your priority. So it's the same question.
My priority, without a doubt, is term limits, not only here in Arizona, but in Washington especially. I think it's high time that we had many more new, younger people in the legislature here and in Congress in Washington. How would I attack this? If I'm elected, I'm a lone soul crying in the wilderness. That may be, but I will make sure that I let you, the voters, know. I will let the legislators know. I will take a survey. I will publish the survey in our papers. Which of our representatives supports term limits? We have some excellent representatives, not only in the Senate. Very difficult to fault Senator McCain. He has been there too long, not because he's Senator McCain, but because we need far more newer, younger people with different ideas. So my priority is term limits through and through.
Thank you. Next question. And Mr. Woods, we'll start with you. With projected budget deficits, how would you work with both sides of the aisle to solve the deficit issue?
Well, I started down that path with the last question. There are two different areas where we are losing a lot of tax monies. One is with tax credits, the one I just talked about. Just shortly, I'll talk about a few more of them. And another is just the flat fact that we just aren't taxing a lot of things. Now, we all may not like to hear this, but we don't tax most of the services that we get here in this state. Yet, a lot of other states do. But if we want to take a look at an extreme, we don't tax country club memberships. Now, taxing if somebody can afford to go to a country club, they could afford to pay the tax to get their membership. Now, for you ladies, I hate to say it, we also don't charge tax for beauticians. So the point being that there are plenty of taxes that we do not collect, but also there are just all sorts of taxes that are refunded, particularly to corporations. One that has happened in the last year, and it is a little complicated, not that you wouldn't be able to understand, but I don't have the time to go through it, but they changed the way that they tax construction equipment, construction supplies. And by changing the way that they tax construction supplies, they lost $125 million out of the state treasury every year. $125 million, plus the fact that a lot of the money that they lost also will not go back to the towns and cities where the construction is located. So it turns out that, again, I apologize, it's not a real obvious thing, but it is true that $125 million was cut out of the treasury just by doing that. And there's no particular reason that they did it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your response, Mr. Archie Moscato?
Well, the budget deficit is looming. It will get bigger. And again, education is the way out. Education will encourage companies to come here. Right now, New York State has a program whereby they're giving free taxes to corporations. Arizona is trying to do the same thing. I would imagine, coming from New York myself, I would rather be in Arizona. I love New York, but I don't want to live there anymore. So I've been here since 1978. Businesses want to come here, but they don't have enough qualified workers, and they don't have enough qualified schools in order for their workers to send their children to. That all needs to be corrected. We need to start eliminating some of these tax loopholes for these corporations. I'm not against tax credits for these companies. However, let's tie them to increased hiring and higher wage jobs. We have a lot of people who would love to work here in Arizona, but right now, in yesterday's paper, they talked about the fact that 17% more people are leaving Arizona than are coming here. And the biggest reason is they are leaving for higher paying jobs elsewhere. Young students, young people do not want to stay in Arizona. 40% of them or more have already stated they want to leave here as soon as they're able to because they don't see a future here. We need to make sure that our young people want to live here and that we encourage them to do so by offering them a better lifestyle. We need to make sure that we cut government spending as much as we can without cutting government services. We need to make sure that the people are empowered and that they have an opportunity for a better life right here in Arizona.
Thank you. Mr. Fred Botha, your response to the question.
One of the things that few of us know, and what you need to know more about, is how little tax our corporations pay here in Arizona. I went to a class some 6 months ago run by the Chambers of Commerce, and one of the best speakers was the budget director here from the governor's office. I subsequently went and spent an hour and a half with him. I think within 5 years, it's estimated that we will not collect any tax from businesses. Now, there's a good reason. We want to give them all the tax breaks we can to get them here. Apple have come here, you know, in the last 6 months. General Motors have got a big computer office here. You might have heard last night that it looks as though that the Tesla car battery is going to go to Reno. $6 million. If you look at that, you're going to find they pay very little tax. The budget director here said there are numerous studies done to make sure that when we give these companies breaks, that it comes back to us. I don't think that's being done. I think that we pay tax on taxable income. The companies do not pay tax on taxable income. They pay it after all the freebies have been taken off. It's most important that I think we look clearly, and at the budget directors, announces to the public how much more we would take in tax if only the companies pay tax. I'm not for extra taxes. I just want it to be a fair and level playing ground. I will focus on that very, very noisily.
Thank you. And Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, your response.
Thank you very much. One of the big ways that Arizona wastes money that we could easily reclaim for our budget is all of the legal fees that we pay to defend legislation that's passed by the legislature that they know from the beginning is not going to fly constitutionally or otherwise. But they pass it anyhow, just thinking that they want to prove their point, and then we spend millions and millions of taxpayer dollars fighting over this litigation in court, and we wind up losing. If we just stopped doing that, we would save enough money to substantially turn our economy around. Another way that we waste money in Arizona is paying for private prisons. There have been studies that prove that the private prison industry spends far more money than public prisons. And I would want to call for a special study to look at the use of funding and the profitability for private prisons. I know nationally that there are 2 huge corporations that manage all these private prisons, and each of those corporations in 2012 profited over $1 billion each. So if they're making that much profit, you know there's some ways to cut for waste. So that would be another area that I would look at, reducing expenditures so that we would have that money left to work on the budget. The last thing that I would do is to work on bringing new businesses and those that would stimulate our economy with good paying jobs. We need to look towards the future to have businesses that are focused on new industry, particularly solar.
Thank you. Our next question, we'll start with you, Mr. Archie Moscato. What do you propose to do to improve the job climate in our state?
I certainly propose, as I had suggested previously, that corporations, companies, should be able to get tax credits for additional hiring and additional higher paying jobs as well. But I don't want to limit that to just companies that are relocating here. I have spoken to many, many small business people who own companies that employ people in LD 22 as well as throughout the state. And they are convinced that if they were to be able to have those same credits extended to them, they would be able to hire more people. They could pay higher paying jobs. They could make sure that Arizonans do get a better lifestyle from doing that. They could increase their productivity and make the entire state better for that. We need to make sure that that job climate is the way that it needs to be, and the best way to do that is to continue to create more jobs. People do not want the myriad of jobs that are coming to the state that are low paying. The Chamber of Commerce, at a Leadership West issue day that I had back in the spring, is very proud of the fact that they bring in companies based on the fact that they'll be paying 14% less to their employees than where they were relocating from. That's just wrong. But those are what the legislature has been doing and promoting, instead of promoting our beautiful lifestyle, our lower cost of living, our great atmosphere, our great people, and our great workforce that we do need to build from the education system and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fred Botha, your response.
One of my top priorities is to sponsor a program to improve our computing skills throughout Arizona. I think the most important area to start with is kids at the age of 3. We learn at the age of 3 how to count, how to read and write. There's no reason why we cannot learn to construct computing apps. I'm an immigrant. I came here almost 30 years ago with my wife and 4 kids, and we took my brother's 2 kids as well. We lived in Jersey. We all did well. We all have good jobs today, and that's because I started work at IBM in Africa. If it wasn't for my skills in computing in Africa, we wouldn't have got here. We wouldn't have done as well. I'm all for pushing people as much as I can to get a good computing education. You will never have to struggle for a job, just as I've never struggled with a job. And here in Arizona, I think there's a good start being done at some of the online schools. I don't know if you're aware that there are quite a few students here who are homeschooled online with wonderful facilities, and those are the kids that do well later. So by the time I leave high school and I leave college, I must know how to construct an app. I know how to count. I know how to read and write. I must know how to construct an app. That's where my focus is in education.
Thank you. Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, your response.
Thank you. You know, recently Robert Robb wrote an article about this Tesla plant, and his point was to say, do you expect the government to put the free into free enterprise? Healthy, sustainable economic growth, not built on government handouts to a handful of favored companies, instead on individuals and companies who contribute to the economy. And that's really a quote that I support. We do need to expect that new businesses that we're recruiting are going to be able to thrive in an economic climate here. And it doesn't mean that we have to give them free handouts or that we have to provide such tax incentives to draw them here. If we improve our education system so that their employees are willing to move here so their kids can have a good education, they will come. Another thing that we need to do is to continue the current freeze, the current moratorium on passing new regulations for business. One of the things that I would want to look at when I'm elected is to study the requirements, the regulations here in Arizona for starting new businesses. There are so many different licensing requirements and so much red tape to go through that it discourages many businesses from coming here. So I'm glad there's a moratorium right now, and I would like to believe that there are probably many of those regulations we could get rid of so that we could make it easier for those new businesses to move in here.
Thank you. And Mr. Larry Woods, your response.
There are various things that I believe we can do to try to help those who either are out of work or have very low-paying jobs who are overqualified for those jobs. One of the things is our apprenticeships and also additional funding to the community college system for retraining in case that's necessary. But let me tell you about something else real quickly here. And it's called a social impact bond. And it's very new here in the United States. There's only one place, it's in New York City, where they're doing this right now, but other states are looking at it. And what it amounts to is this. You find individuals who are willing to put up the money to set up an organization that is based solely on outcomes. As an example, if we're talking about jobs, it would be a job training program. But it's a job training program where they only get paid from the state. They only get their money back from the state if it's successful. If it's not successful, they don't get the money back. And this is something that, as I said, is very new. I can see it not only being used in the job area, but in childcare, in preschool, and that sort of thing, because like I say, it's not the idea of privatizing. It's not the idea of privatizing. It's the idea of outcomes. If the company that is created doesn't deliver, then the state doesn't pay them. And so where does the money come from? The money comes from the savings that the state has by not having to do the training or that sort of thing. And it's something that I think you're going to see a lot more of, but it's going to require legislation to get it started.
Thank you. Next question for Mr. Fred Botha. Governor Brewer last year expanded Medicaid in Arizona. What would your long-term approach to Medicaid be if elected?
I think we've got to look not only at Medicare and Medicaid and retirement as one, because it's very important for us in our district to know that our retirement is secure, our healthcare is secure, and the healthcare includes both Medicare and Medicaid. At the moment, 70% of the federal budget is spent on defense and retirement and healthcare. We cannot sustain that for much longer. We have to, in my estimation, have a separate program, not only for retirement, but for Medicare and for Medicaid, where people have a choice. If the one program is going to go under, we should know the figures. There should be another program where we can choose whether we've got to pay more to get back less, but we have to give people a choice to say, folks, your retirement, your Medicare, and your Medicaid is secure forever is just unrealistic. We cannot sustain that. 1/3 of Medicare costs are in the last year of life. You yourselves in this area know how many tests are done on people on the last year of life. We have to have a system which is sustainable, and the only way to do that is to look at the figures and debate them. At the moment, neither of the main parties will debate those issues because they both want to get into power, and if you start telling people you'll cut their Medicare or you'll cut their retirement, they are going to push you out immediately. That's one of my 5 priorities, to make sure that everyone knows what our options are. We have to have other options, and we have to be able to choose from them.
Thank you. Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, your response.
Thank you. I certainly agree with the Medicaid expansion, and it was very good business sense for Arizona as well as good human health care sense. The expansion was very supported by the business community. There were over 300,000 Arizonans who continue to receive health care benefits because of the expansion. If we had not continued the Medicaid expansion, many of the rural hospitals in the state would have had to close, which would have created a health care crisis. And even in Central Phoenix, the Maryvale Hospital, which is a general hospital, very strongly supported on the Medicaid dollars, would also have had to close. So we would have had a huge health care crisis, and it would have been a huge economic impact on the state, because think of all the jobs that go along with running those hospitals, and we would lose doctors and nurses and other healthcare professionals. So I certainly support the fact that the decision was made to continue the Medicaid, and there is no cost to the state for this program because the hospitals are paying the state share of the cost. And it's worth it to them to do that because then they continue to be able to get reimbursed for serving low-income or indigent people who have Medicaid benefits. So that it's not costing the state of Arizona at all to continue those health care services, and yet it benefits greatly the economy as well as providing health care for needy people.
Thank you. Mr. Larry Woods, your response.
I agree with everything, excuse me, I agree with everything Bonnie said. the Medicaid in Arizona has an interesting history. It started out, the Medicaid that we know today started out in 2000 with Proposition 200, which was a citizens initiative. And it's interesting because it was based, the amount of money that was going to be put in the system was based on cigarette smokers, because it was tied to the decisions that came from the lawsuits to the cigarette manufacturers. The problem was that the cigarette manufacturers also had built into this the formula that said if fewer people smoke, then we don't have to give you as much money. Well, fewer people quit smoking, or fewer people aren't smoking today. Therefore, the amount of money went down, and that started hurting the whole project. Also, when they put this in 2000, they thought that 40,000 would sign up. 250,000 signed up. And so that hurt the system from day one. So even though we have the Medicaid system today, the expanded Medicaid, and I am 100% behind it, it has had a very rocky history. I will say one particular statistic that's interesting is this last year, the uncompensated monies that for hospitals, the amount of money that they don't collect is $170 million, and it was $246 million a year before. So it's dropped over 30% in the last year. So it is working. It is working. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Archie-Moscato, your response.
I am firmly in favor of Medicaid restoration. Back in 2010, the voters approved having 300,000 approximately Arizonans be eligible for access. Arizona was the last state to have a Medicaid program that would work for the people. It is now a very remarkable and well-respected program. They call it the Golden Program throughout the country. Everybody looks at access as the model that they should achieve. Well, in 2012, the legislature decided they were going to cut that off because they wanted to solve budget problems. And medical expenses are certainly a budget problem. The people cannot afford to do that again. What will happen if these 350,000 or more citizens right now have their Medicaid taken away from them? They're going to go to the local hospitals, to the ERs, where it's going to cost us, the taxpayers, much more money than we could ever imagine that we would have to pay, as we did for the last 2 years before they reinstated. Thank goodness that Governor Brewer did this. She did it for the wrong reason, but at least she got it done. My opponent is party to the lawsuit to eliminate Medicaid restoration. I believe that's wrong. We need to support people so that in the end, they can get off of government assistance and create a better life for themselves.
Thank you. At this time, each of the candidates will have the opportunity to ask a question of their opponent. Before the debate, each candidate drew the name of another candidate and will have the opportunity to ask that question now. In the case of Mr. Archie-Moscato, I will be asking his question. So the first question is from Mr. Larry Woods for Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson.
And the question is why? Okay. The question is, how do you plan to make a difference in child protection?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. I mentioned earlier when I was introducing myself that my career in Colorado was in child protection. And I worked, first of all, as a line-level caseworker, but was promoted up through the system so that when I retired, I was an executive administrator at the state level of the Child Protection Agency. So I know all the ins and outs of running that business. I know about the sources of federal funding, and I know how to properly manage a taxpayer-paid budget. As an executive that ran an organization that used taxpayer dollars to pay employees, I was forever looking at ways to cut costs. My budget was dependent upon the legislature, and there were years when they gave everybody a 5% reduction. I had to learn how to manage and cut costs, and I was able to do that. And one of my motivations for running is that I do believe I have the skills to help straighten out the problems in child protection in Arizona.
Thank you. The next question will be from Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson for Mr. Fred Botha.
Mr. Botha, what is your plan for improving transportation in the West Valley?
I think it's got to be looked at very carefully within the context of our budget. You can see exactly what's happened in the city with the new rail link there. They're already speaking about a connection between Tucson and Phoenix. I think all these are great plans, but I think with the Supreme Court saying now that we've got to find $800 million for the schools, we've got to look at a budget where we can predict 1, 3, and 5 years out what we do for transportation, the national parks, Medicare. All these issues are top priorities. No one wants to downgrade them. Everyone wants to upgrade them. But hey, folks, we've got to remain solvent. And the key issue always is how much do we bring in and how much do we allocate for the different programs. So in terms of transportation, I would love to say there's going to be a rail link between here and the city to make it easier to get into the city for a job, increase the bus services and so on. But I don't think you can begin to even look at a picture until we have a firm idea of what our income is and what our expenses are going to be spent on. We have to coordinate.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Mr. Fred Botha to Mr. Larry Woods.
Larry, when Social Security or retirement started, I think the figures were 170 people were contributing to one person's retirement. Figures are now 3 are contributing to 1. How do we sustain a retirement system with all the boomy boomers, the baby boomers, all the baby boomers now coming on stream? How do we handle it and keep our retirement secure?
Beanie Babies. I think that's what you're saying. Well, first, I think that's a very good question, but it is something that the federal government has a lot to say about. I would suggest, though, that one of the things, if I were in the federal government, that I would be promoting is first to eliminate the ceiling on the I don't know exactly what's the title. You know what I'm talking about, where it hits 105,000 and they don't take it anymore. I don't remember. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the title is. But that's one of the things I would eliminate. And I also might consider the fact to move up that retirement age a couple of years, and that would help quite a bit. We do need to think about the retirees, though, because our district is very unique. We have in this district we have the largest number of retirees in the state. When you think about it, because through all of ours, we have the largest number of retirees, yet the rest of the district are pretty much a bedroom community where people are going somewhere else. And 75% of the land is undeveloped yet in this district. And so we have a very unique district here, and we need to, if I had the time, we could talk further about this, but there's a lot of things that we need to look at. They're very unique about this district. 75% land, and half of the, not half, but a good percentage of the population are retired, and the rest is pretty much a bedroom community. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, you just about gave me an extra minute.
And our final question, Mr. Archie Moscato, what is your position on Common Core?
That's such a great question, and the governor candidate spoke about that last night. I am fully in favor of Common Core because, as a retired teacher, and as my wife is a retired teacher, we appreciate the fact that Arizona has had some of the lowest standards in the nation for public education, for expectations of our students, for when we have students that are tested, we have no response to whatever their testing turns out to be. There is nothing that helps these students to get to where they need to be. Common Core is a start. We don't even have Common Core in Arizona. We have the Arizona College and Career Ready Standards. That exempts us from some of the qualifications that Common Core requires of the state. We need to make sure that our students are well taught. We need to make sure that they are well funded in our schools so that we can purchase classroom equipment, computer equipment, as Mr. Botha had referred to, whatever technology is necessary to prepare our children and our adults for the community and the economy of the 21st century. It's great to think local control. That's great. But in reality, we live in a global economy, and we cannot have children or adults who are only equipped to work in Arizona. We have to make them so that they can go and compete against anybody else in the world at any particular point in their lives, and make it so that with their critical thinking abilities, they are able to better adapt to whatever comes their way in life. And we know that there are so many more things that will come their way than they are even thinking of at this point in anybody's life. Common Core is a great start. It is not the ultimate, but it is better than what Arizona has.
Thank you. We will now begin the candidate 2-minute closing statements. The first closing statement will be given by Mr. Larry Woods.
Thank you, and I want to thank you personally. You've done a great job. You've kept this audience calmed down. Or asleep, I don't know. In my opening remarks, I made a comment about cooperating coalitions. And let me tell you a little bit about what I'm talking about. To make things work down at the Capitol, you've got to work with both sides. And so two of the coalitions that I'm talking about are first our party's coalition, our party caucus, and also the Republican Party caucus. You've got to work with those people. And so those are two. But let me tell you about one that may not be so obvious. And I call it my advisory cabinet. And what my advisory cabinet is going to be a group of experts who live here in this district and who understand this district. And they are experts in given areas of issues. And what they will be used for is to be the people that will tell me what they think about bills as they come up or as I create bills. For an example, if a bill comes up that has to do with education, I'm going to send it to my education experts who will be teachers and also superintendents of schools. And I'll ask them, what do you think? And I'm talking about people who live in here, not somewhere else. I'm going to ask them, what do you think about this? And that's going to help me understand where I should be going with these sorts of things. I'm also going to start what I call a virtual office. And the virtual office is going to be a website, a Facebook page, a Twitter account, and an email newsletter. And that's not just to tell everybody what's going on here in the district, but also to get feedback of what they think I should be doing. And I'm also going to be telling them what everybody else is doing down there, so they will know what's going on. And by
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bonnie Boyce Wilson, your closing comments, please.
Thank you very much. I didn't mention when I did my opening remarks about my education, and so I wanted to tell you now that I do have a master's degree in social work. I also taught as an adjunct professor in the graduate schools of social work, both at the University of Denver as well as here locally at ASU. And I can use those experiences as a social worker to serve you well as your legislator. Arizona is really at a crossroads. I truly believe this year is a very critical election year. It is so important that we get everybody out to vote this year. This will be non-presidential election year, and for that reason, many people don't bother to come out. But boy, Arizona's issues are so critical at this point. We really need to work to get everybody out to vote. As I mentioned earlier, my main concerns are both with education and with child protection, but also with the economy and with jobs. I really do believe that I have good negotiating skills. As Larry mentioned, it's important to be able to work with people who have opposing points of view. You can't just go in and ramrod things through, especially as a first-year legislator. So you've got to be able to work together with people. I've had special mediation training and other kinds of skills that will serve me well to be able to resolve issues and come to some common grounds so that we can pass legislation that is going to serve all Arizonans. Thank you very much for having the debate tonight.
Thank you. And Mr. Fred Botha, your closing comments.
Folks, as an independent, if I'm elected by you, will I change the world? Probably not. Will I change Arizona? Probably not. But I will be noisy in a very quiet way. I will make sure that each of you, as a voter, I will make sure each of our legislators, not only here in Arizona, but in Washington, know what our priorities are. We have to change course. You can hear the president last night. He is afraid. We are afraid in Washington. We have to change course in our economy. We have to change course in our defense systems. We have to make sure that we are not trying to run the world. The world don't like it. We don't like them trying to run us. They don't like us trying to run them. We have to change a lot of things, not only in our education. We have some experts you've heard here this evening. We have to change many of our things in education, not only our funding. My particular priority, because I've just been really lucky and working at IBM, is to focus on kids and showing them how they can write apps and learn to have a good job in the economy. We have to focus right here on the cost of our utilities. I am an intervener at the moment with EPCOR. They've run rings around me for the last 3 years. That is going to change if I'm elected. We have to focus also on the Corporation Commission, who are not giving us a fair system. I will be noisy in a very quiet way. I need your vote more than the Democrats, more than the Republicans. There are plenty of their supporters elsewhere. Vote for me.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Archie Moscato, your closing comments.
I would like to thank the moderator again and the participants for being here, as well as the timekeeper. Thank you very much. I will make a difference in Arizona. I plan on working with the legislators that are incumbents that come back, but I also plan to stand up to them when they are wrong. And so many times in the last several years or more, they have been wrong. They have caused us innumerable laughable moments throughout the United States and sometimes throughout the world. My opponent has specifically stated that the moderate Republicans that have held them from completing some of these prejudicial and discriminatory bills from being passed on to the governor for her signing will come back again, because they are going to work to make sure that they get enough like-minded legislators elected to serve with them, and they will continue to do it until they get these bills passed. That is just wrong. I will make sure that I attack these people by telling the public what is going on, making everything transparent, because there is very little transparency at the state level right now. These people are doing what they're doing, and they consider it a voter mandate to continue doing it every time they get elected or re-elected. This nonsense has to stop. We need equal rights for women. We need equal rights for all Arizonans, including marriage equality. We need to make sure that Medicaid expansion or restoration does not get repealed. We need to make sure that the Affordable Care Act stays in Arizona so that everybody has equal access to insurance, because so many of us do not. We need to increase jobs, higher paying jobs, and opportunities to create a better life for the citizens of Arizona. And I would appreciate your vote. My name is Archangel Moscato, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. We thank you so much for participating in our forum, and we thank all of you who took the time to come out and inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to find out more about clean elections and the candidates running for office by visiting www.azcleanelections.gov. A link to the video of this debate, as well as other clean election debates, will be posted on that site within 72 hours of a scheduled debate. We also ask that you fill out the debate evaluation form that you received as you entered the room and return it and the pens to our volunteers. Your feedback is important to the commission. Again, thank you all for coming tonight.